In a week's time, I'm going to be going into production for the Water Tower. So I just wanted to take this moment to chat a little bit about the script, the themes behind it, and a little bit into how I wrote it and the process of that.
Snaps, Episode 2, the script.
The basic premise is about two women who are isolated in their own ways, finding each other and kind of finding comfort in that relationship, and then through that relationship feeling stronger to tackle the other things that they're dealing with throughout the film. I don't want to say too much because I think it would be really nice for you to discover it when the actual film's ready, but I just wanted to delve a little bit into some of the themes and some of the ideas that I'm trying to explore through this piece. One of the ideas I'm looking into is feeling like you don't fit into a place, and particularly not fitting into a place that's supposed to be your home, somewhere that you've spent maybe your entire life or a significant amount of time in, and the kind of coping mechanisms that people come up with to make sure that they feel comfortable in a space, or perhaps that they isolate themselves from the society that they're born into. This is an idea that very much comes from personal experience, and although my experiences aren't as extreme as those in the film, I've definitely had those feelings of being in a place and not necessarily feeling like my ideologies are reflected in the society that I'm around. I wasn't necessarily bullied or kind of cast aside by society, but I definitely didn't feel like the way that I wanted to live my life was the consensus of the population around me. And with these feelings of isolation, we see the character really go inside herself and really spend a lot of time inside her own head instead of actually spending time in reality. So that's a coping mechanism for her, is that she lives in her imagination a lot of the time, and a lot of the things that she's driven by are almost like a bit of a dream world to her. And these are also main themes running throughout the film, is ambition and dreams. I definitely felt like the ambitions and the dreams that I was wanting to follow when I was younger weren't seen as favourable or a realistic career path. So in this film we'll see ambition take quite a forefront in some of the ideas that I'm looking at. We also see a romantic relationship develop between two women. So I was drawing off my own personal experiences as a lesbian. I think when I was much younger I used to write purely about heterosexual couples, and I would transfer my experiences onto other relationships, which is a totally normal thing to do as a writer. You can absolutely draw from your own emotions and put it onto a character that is nothing like yourself. But recently I feel like I've got much more inspiration from not only my own personal experiences, but the experiences of my friends and the people around me. I didn't particularly have a deadline for writing this. This was something that I started as a passion project, something that I started alone. And then when I was starting to get happy with how the script was going, I started bringing other people on board. It's been an idea that I've been carrying around with me for a while, mostly inside my head. And then as I formed scenes or formed things that I thought were working, I would start to write them down in little notebooks. Like, I always carry a small notebook with me everywhere I go, and I just jot down things. If they never get used, then that's fine, but sometimes I'll go back and look on it and think, oh, actually that was a really good idea, or that's not quite working. Once I've got a collection of notes that I feel like is going in a similar direction, and I can actually see a film forming, then I'll actually sit down and I'll make a breakdown of where I see the film from start to end. Once that breakdown's done, I'll start to read it over and I'll start to play the film in my head and see how I feel like it's running. If there are parts that aren't working, I start to jumble certain scenes up, or perhaps I need something extra to put in there, so I'll go away. But I won't think about it in a very pressured way, because I think that I have to leave it in the back of my head and then it'll work itself through. And usually that strategy really works for me, because then you start to come up with natural solutions rather than making decisions on the spot and forcing your script to be a certain way because you feel that there's a gap in it. Then what I'll do is I'll actually start the writing process. So because I've got my breakdown to go off of, I'll actually physically start writing each scene. And I tend to do the first draft quite quickly, and I go a lot off of intuition. And then I'll take a step back, I'll read it again, and I'll start picking at it and I'll start going over it again. Once I've got a draft that I feel like is very close to being finished, I'll then share it with some people to get their feedback and see if how I'm thinking this film is running is really working, because I can see everything in my head and they might not perceive something the way that I've meant it to be perceived. So it's a really useful exercise to have somebody who's going to be really honest with you and say, I don't really understand this bit, like what are you going for? If somebody doesn't understand something on the page, you need to find a way to communicate that to them, especially if there's somebody that you're going to be working with, because you want to make sure that they're understanding how you see the film, and then they can work and collaborate with you, but you know that everybody's on the same page and everyone's working towards the same film. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about, but if you have any questions, anything that you're slightly curious about, then feel free to leave a comment, and perhaps I can make another video addressing these questions, or I can just answer these questions in the comments.